Hello everyone, really quick tutorial on the basics of Natron. Before we get stuck into an actual video tutorial, let's have a little quick discussion about the basics of Natron. The easiest way, I think, to think about Natron is similar to the underpants gnomes in South Park. So the underpants gnomes in South Park have three phases. They have phase 1, which is, in this case, it's they collect the underpants. Phase 2 is, well, I don't really know what phase 2 is, and phase 3 is profit. And we can think about Natron in a similar way. So phase 1 is always going to be, we want to read the information in. And the information may be a video file, it could be a sequence of images, and we read that into Natron. Okay, we're going to ignore phase 2 just for the time being because it's got a bunch of question marks. Phase 3, or I should say the final phase in Natron, is to write it out. Okay, and write it out is what most people would know as exporting. So we take something, we do step 2. So step 2 is a question mark, and then phase 3 is we write it out. So what is this question mark? Well, a question mark can be anything. It can be any single thing. It can be any multiple of things. And we do this through nodes. So in Natron, we connect the first phase of reading to this second stage. Okay. And so, for example, this second stage could be, we may want to desaturate it. Okay, desat. Okay, which essentially means to make black and white. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, whereas the underpants gnomes had 3 phases, we're going to call this the first phase. So this is first, and this is last. And what we have in here is the middle stages. So at the moment, we have the desaturation stage, so we connect. But after the desaturation stage, we may want to do something else. We may want to crop. So we may want to make it a different size, the image a different size. We can have as many of these intermediary stages as we want, and then on the final node stage, so after the final thing we want to do to our video, we simply export it to a write node. So every one of these is a node. So pretty simple. So you start, we have a beginning, we move down, and we end up by writing it, and we export it, and it writes to a file that we can then do something with. So let's move on and have a look at an example. So here we have Natron. We've just loaded up Natron, and it can look a little bit daunting. So what we're going to do now is to put what we just looked at into some practice. So the first thing we need is the phase 1, which is the read the image file. So I'll just do that again. So I right click, go to image, read. Now I could just hit R, but let's just do it the long way. So we go to read. This opens a read node. So we navigate to our file, and let's just use this one. So it's a MPEG-4, but you can load image sequences, anything you want. So let's open. And now the thing is, nothing's happening because we have this read node here. So this read node there. And we have our viewer, which is this black space here. The problem is that the viewer is not connected. So what we need to do is we grab the little line and we can connect it. And so now we have our input our read and our viewer. Now the viewer is not the same as write, but this just lets us see what we're doing. So we can sort of scrub across the file and see exactly what's happening. Now, what we would do now is we would add a write node. Okay, so I'm just going to navigate to my temporary directory, so it just gets deleted, and we would call this example. Okay, and we could go file type. We could save it as any one of these file types. So we could save it as a image sequence. If we're going to do that, we'd save it as I would save it as PNGs if it was going to be an image sequence, but let's save it as an MP4. Okay, as I said, I would typically save it as an image sequence, but for beginners, let's save it as an MP4. Okay, and the hash at the end of it is usually used for image sequences, so that's the number of the padding for the number of zeros or the number of digits in it, so we don't really need that. So let's save that. Okay, so we've got our write node there. And so what we would do is we would grab that and put that to there. So if we wanted to export or write what we've done, we would simply go to render, render selected writers. Okay. Before we do that though, we would need to, sorry, that's another thing. Over to the right side, we have the properties of whichever selected node. So we would go to the right node, and we would probably select that. Okay. So that means that when we click render selected writers, it will sort of export it. But of course, I'm going to cancel this, okay? Because at the moment, all we would be doing is doing a straight copy, considering probably with a lot of loss, seeing that we're using a lossy format of the original. So we have our first phase and our last phase. So we've got our collecting our underpants, and we have our profit there. So let's do some of the intermediary stages. So let's say, as per our previous example, we wanted to make it black and white. We would go right click to color, saturation. Okay, so we have this node again. Now at the moment, nothing is sort of floating. It's just floating, so it's not actually doing anything. So what we would do is we'd bring it in there, see how it goes green, and bang, too easy. So the thing is though, is that it doesn't seem to be black and white. Now, that is because of two reasons. First of all, we haven't adjusted the saturation, but secondly, our viewer is still connected to our read node. So what we need to do is to connect that to this node. Now, when we go to the properties of the saturation node, we can see what would be our export would be being affected. Okay. So now, if you were doing a lot of things, so we could just leave it at that, and we would be exporting black and well, if I pull this right down, we'd be exporting a black and white video. Now, let's just say we wanted to do something else. So as per our previous example, let's just say we wanted to crop. We would go transform, crop, okay? And we would then add it there. And again, we could suggest, so if we wanted to go for a Star Wars sort of aspect ratio, the 1 to 2.35, we would change the height to about 460. And you can see that's the crop there, but then we'd want to center it, so the bottom of the Y, we would go to 130. Okay, so now the thing is, it's still doesn't seem to be very cropped. And the reason for that is that when we follow our node path, we go image, input image, or read to saturation, desaturated it, but the viewer is coming off the saturation, so we want to unlink it from the saturation and add it to the crop. And as we can see, now it's cropped. Okay. So now when we export it, it will be a cropped video with that has been desaturated to black and white. Final thing I'm going to suggest or just highlight is what I like to do is I'm always like to be aware of what the original was. So what we can do is we can create another viewer. Oops, we don't want that. Delete that, and let's connect this viewer to the original source. Okay, and we can sort of move that around as we want. So we have viewer 2, okay, is original, and just to highlight something, we can go to the properties of this viewer and we can go to node and we can actually label it. Now obviously original, obviously for a simple project like this we can probably figure it out, but after a while it gets kind of, oops, what happened there? Original. And that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Ah, that's right, because I was on the crop. Okay. Okay, so, okay, what happened was I actually had the crop highlighted and I was messing around with that. So, sorry, we highlight the viewer 2 and we type original. Okay, so now, oh, what's going on here? Ah, okay, because I am acting, okay, ignore me, okay, silly me. We have, sorry, on our right, we have the list of properties and we have our viewer 2 is right. Where are we? And looks like the viewers don't get properties. Okay. Edit. Okay, how odd. Okay, I thought we could label that. Obviously, we can't. So let's not worry about that. So just ignore everything I just said. Okay, so anyway, getting back on track, we have a viewer 2 connected to original. If we go down this path, we desaturate, we crop, and then from crop we will write, and we've also got a viewer so we can see what's happening. So viewer 2 is the original, viewer 1, and we can see viewer 1 there is what happens after. Now, you can easily switch between the two. What I like to do though is to see them both simultaneously. So we move our mouse to this little boxy thing there and we left click and we split horizontally. Now we grab viewer 2 and we just pull it across there, and now we have our original and our edited. Now it would probably make more sense to actually have them this way, so we have our original and our edited there, and we can sort of scroll through both. Okay, and then when we want to export, we click on write FMPEG3, whoops, render selected writers, and it will chug away and export this to the write node, and it's being written to the format of the an MP. The container will be an MP4 and the codec is the MPEG-4 video. So hopefully this has been a little bit enlightening to those just beginning with Natron, and I wish you good luck on your journey. If you have found this or any other video informative or helpful, please consider liking and subscribing and sharing with your friends.